my career is currently a smoldering pile of carbon, much like the sector I am supposed to be patrolling. It is fantastic. My glass armor is pressurized. My internal temperature is a crisp orange, and yet there is a hole in the universe. Right where that human tin can should have been, my mind sees nothing. It is a flickering gray smudge, a dead spot manifested dead center in my vision. My brain is literally trying to erase the human ship because acknowledging its presence is apparently a lethal error in logic. My optic sensors are fine, the ship is there, but my survival instincts are frantically deleting the data before it can reach my consciousness. Then a voice crackled over the emergency band, sounding far too calm for a man whose hull was melting. "Unfortunate," Hayes said. "What happened next?" "It is the reason I do not look at stars anymore. You should probably look away too, but I know you won't." 11 days earlier, the tactical display had flickered for the first time, 3 hours before the star's corona began to scream. I had dismissed the ghost signals as a sensor glitch caused by the gravitational eddies of the collapsing star. After all, I was an Ignis Lord of the Ember Throne, and I had a reputation to rebuild. Dealing with a lone human scout ship near a dying sun was supposed to be my ticket back to civilization, not a descent into whatever madness this species calls strategy. I remember thinking that my mate would be pleased with the promotion. I even started composing the message. I never sent it. The smudge on my glass armor, a tiny, persistent grease mark from the refueling bay, bothered me more than the human's erratic flight path. The human ship, the Vanguard destroyer, was sitting right on the edge of the event horizon. It was a suicide position. I moved my cruiser, the Ember's Reach, into a pincer maneuver, ready to melt their thrusters and end this tedious chase. I was about to order the main batteries to cycle when the human captain didn't even look at me. On the intercepted visual feed, Hayes was staring at a tactical display of his own, one that showed fleet positions from a battle that hadn't happened yet. He looked terrible. His skin was the color of old ash, eyes bloodshot and twitching. My scans indicated the entire crew had been awake for over 400 hours. It is a biological impossibility. I assume humans must run on some primitive form of solar power, absorbing the star's radiation until their tiny gears seize up, because no organic brain survives that level of sleep deprivation. They weren't just staying awake, they were mapping. They were navigating the precise gravitational eddies of a collapsing star with the obsessive focus of a terminal psychosis. "He's trapped," I told my bridge crew. I remember the pride in my voice. It makes me want to extinguish myself. My flames were a confident, bright orange. I watched the Vanguard destroyer bob in the heat haze. It looked like a wounded insect. I was so focused on the kill that I didn't notice the tactical display in my own periphery was no longer flickering. The ghost signals had stabilized. They weren't glitches, they were shadows. The human crew, vibrating with the manic energy of the sleepless, had found the one blind spot in the star's corona, a gravity well, where a fleet could hide in plain sight. I noticed a stain on my sleeve. I focused on that for longer than was professionally appropriate. Why was I looking at a stain when a human was ignoring my weapons lock? The realization didn't hit me like a wave. It arrived like a slow, cold realization that my internal fire was turning blue. Hayes wasn't trapped. He was the anchor. He was the bait. And as he looked up from his screen, his bloodshot eyes meeting the camera, I realized that the unfortunate person in this system wasn't him. The Vanguard destroyer didn't flee. Of course it didn't. That would have been too simple, too logical for a species that treats sleep like a suggestion rather than a biological requirement. Instead, the ship pivoted on a gravitational axis that should have sheared its hull into ribbons. It was a maneuver born of sleep deprivation psychosis, a desperate, jagged twitch of a pilot who had forgotten how to feel fear. My weapons officer, a young spark who still thought medals were worth the metal they were stamped on, started screaming about an intercept course. I ignored him. I was busy watching the tactical display. The glitches were no longer flickering. They were solidifying into a formation that looked like a jagged crown around the star's throat. If this report ever reaches the Admiralty, I will be reassigned to a desk in a vacuum-sealed basement. Honestly, the thought of filing paperwork for the next century is starting to sound like a vacation. Impact. The ember's reach groaned, the glass of my armor vibrating with a frequency that threatened to shatter my very essence. The blind spot in my vision didn't just stay in my center. It expanded, swallowing the star as the human ship slammed into my forward shields with the grace of a falling mountain. I looked at the feed one last time. Hayes was still there, sitting in a bridge that was literally melting around him, holding a ceramic mug of brown liquid with a hand that didn't even shake. He was smiling. It wasn't a heroic smile. It was the smile of a man who had seen the bottom of the universe and found it funny. Unfortunate, he repeated. And then the corona of the star didn't just ripple. It tore open. 600 ships emerged from the white-hot scream of the sun, and the preliminary analysis suggested that the alarm went off. Not the regular one, the one behind glass. They weren't just hidden, they were integrated into the solar rhythm. Their hulls coated in the same gravitational signature the crew had mapped, while their minds were rotting from exhaustion. My flames didn't just turn blue, they compressed. My core became a dense, cold stone as the reality of a hidden human fleet manifested where physics said nothing could survive. We weren't the hunters. We were the calibration targets. I remember thinking that the cafeteria had probably just run out of the spicy nutrient paste I liked. It was a stupid thing to think while 600 railguns were locking onto my position, but my brain had decided that flavor profiles were more manageable than impending extinction. The tactical display on my wrist finally stopped flickering and locked into a perfect, frozen grid. It wasn't a future battle anymore. It was this one. The formation was a mirror of the jagged crown, an exact match for the slaughter. The human ships opened fire,